Hi ladies, I wanted to get us started. We're going to be making a recipe Ashley found for the cinnamon rolls, and it's going to take some time. So super bummed we can't meet in person, but we'll work on the fun part together over Zoom. But I have some homework for you so that we're ready. First, I want to talk to you about how a recipe is written when it's written well. Now they have the internet, anybody can write a recipe, so sometimes these rules get broken, but if you buy a cookbook, this is how the recipes will work. So first is your list of ingredients in the order that you'll need them. And sometimes they group that. So ours has kind of 3 different sets of ingredients that we're going to use. And then the order, the instructions, and those also should be in the order you would need to do them. So this one's kind of more complicated than things we've done before. Definitely more ingredients, but we got this. It's going to be awesome. The first thing I want us to do, I've already done it. Go ahead and gather 3 different bowls. So one is going to be a big mixing bowl. One's going to be small. We're just going to measure, and then something that you can microwave. And in the first small bowl, you're going to put a half cup of flour, and it's all written in the recipe. Half cup of flour, it's a half teaspoon of baking powder, and half teaspoon of baking soda. So that's going to sit aside. In your microwave safe bowl, you're going to put the milk, the oil, and the sugar. And I microwaved mine. What we want it to be is a little warmer than room temperature. So I microwaved mine for a minute and then just left it out. And then we're going to have a larger bowl that we're going to use to kind of mix like our dough as we're going to think about it. So one of the first things we need to do also is talk about yeast. I bake a lot, so this is how I keep my yeast. Most people will find it in a packet, and you'll see that in a recipe like this one calls for 1 packet of yeast. So that's actually 2 1/4 teaspoons. So if you have a lot of yeast like this, measure out 2 1/4 teaspoons. Otherwise, just use the whole packet. And the deal with yeast is that it's alive. It's like little dried out bacteria that we want to wake up. And we're going to rehydrate it, wake it up. We're going to feed it. It wants to eat sugar, and then I think it farts air. And that's what makes our dough squishy, like air pockets. I really hope I have that right. So, but the other deal with it is yeast is that because it's alive, it's really delicate. So if the liquid, so we need a liquid because we need to rehydrate it, and we need sugar, but we also need it to be warm so that they'll come alive. But if it's hot, if it's even a little too hot, it'll just kill them all. So if you like boil water, put your yeast in there, it won't work because it's too hot. So what I did is I took mine, and I'm like that kind of baker that I'll just stick my finger in there, and it should feel about like my body feels. If my body is 98.6, that's a good temperature. If it feels hot to my finger, it's too hot for the yeast. So what I'm going to do is measure my 2, and I'm just sprinkling it over the liquid, and 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, and I'm going to let that stir it up a little and let that like soak. This is what it's looking like. We're just going to let the yeast start to wake up. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is a good habit to get into when we have a complex recipe with a lot of ingredients. One of the reasons why I had you do like the 3 bowls is it's easier to measure all of your ingredients ahead of time before you start mixing everything together, right? And this way we know if we need something, if we're missing an ingredient or something, and B, we don't have to mess with measuring while we're already starting the process. So to recap, we have our wet ingredients, including yeast that's coming alive. We have our dry ingredients, we're going to use about an hour, and then we have the rest of our flour. So at this point, we can pour our wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. I'm going to do like a half at a time. And you could do this if you have a real heavy duty stand mixer, you can do that, but cinnamon roll is technically a bread, and that's a really dense dough. So it'll burn out most mixers, unless the heavy duty ones. And you don't have to go crazy, you just kind of have to mix it until everything is combined. And make sure you get everything, as much of that yeast, milk, sugar mixture in. And what's going to happen is we had sugar in there, right? Then the yeast is going to keep eating the sugar in the flour. And so you want to get everything good and incorporated. And then we're gonna let that rise. Okay, so this is the dough I got. Looks a little wet, but I am going to trust the recipe. It looks pretty good. And so now what we're gonna do, according to the recipe's instructions, we're gonna let it rise for an hour. I'm gonna do this on a countertop, because again, we want those yeasties to get good and warm and happy in there and eat neat and make air bubbles. So that's one of the ways we'll know it's working. The other thing we want to do is, okay, wheat flour has gluten, which is a protein chain. This is how it's explained to me. So in flour, if you looked at it like a macroscope or an electron microscope, I don't even know, but the gluten chains would look like this. They're tightly knit, they're kind of tangled up. And if we were to bake something from here, it'll be kind of tough. It won't be airy and flaky and delicate. So when we get it wet and we let it rest, what it does is it kind of stretches it out, right? So it's, instead of a ball, we get kind of a looser, it rises. And when we bake something that looks like this, it's delicate, it's easy, it won't be chewy, it'll be like flaky and light and taste better. So we're gonna do that by, I'm gonna cover this with saran wrap and just leave it on the counter for an hour. See you in an hour. Okay, here we are, it's an hour later. Our dough is grown a little bit more. I don't know why I'm saying so much. So this is this quarter cup of flour, half teaspoon baking soda, half teaspoon of baking powder. So we're just gonna mix that in, stir it up, and we're gonna cover it up again and stick it in the refrigerator. So ideally, according to the recipe, they want us to do this for overnight. I think it'll be fine. There's 3 different leavening agents, those agents that help bread and stuff rise, the yeast, the soda, and the powder. So I think it'll be fine if you guys do make the most of the dough, make all of it, and we do the rest of the recipe in the afternoon when we meet. So I think that'll work just fine. So I added the rest of the flour. It's definitely much less sticky. I'm gonna do it with my hands to incorporate it all. Not sure how I feel about this. I feel like we should have mixed all the dry ingredients at the same time, but I'm using the recipe. The recipe is a modification. I modified the recipe, and then the recipe I use was somebody who modified a recipe from the Pioneer Kitchen, I think. So, oh, no, this still looks great. Check this out. See how it's like stretchy and good, and you can handle it, and it's not too sticky. This is what we want it to be. So I'm just making sure all of that dough, that powder, the rest of the flour we added is incorporated. Oh, this is gonna be good, guys. This is gonna be awesome. So I'm gonna leave that in there. So we are gonna meet tomorrow afternoon. If you guys could stick this in the fridge until maybe like half an hour before we're set to meet. So give it a little bit of a chance to come up to room temperature. I think that would be perfect. All right, can't wait to see you ladies. Let's have fun.